1972, the Nobel Prize winners in chemistry and physics were both asked, what will the award be given for in the year 2000? Independent of each other, both replied, for the study of human consciousness. In many ways, you can say that we're now standing on the edge of a new frontier. You live in a time when there's a growing interest in the mind, but little knowledge yet about what it really is and how it works. You live at a time in human history when science and technology have performed miracles undreamed of by your ancestors. But at the same time, it's clear that we don't have sufficient wisdom to manage the complex world that we've created for ourselves. As a result, we are individually and collectively suffering from many problems. We suffer not from a lack of information, but from a lack of qualities and strengths of mind and ways of being that allow us to observe and adapt in healthy ways to our world. It's clear that we need to learn how to get more focused and to discover the strategies for living that create less problems rather than more. The focused mind state is more important now than ever before because it offers you the power, the clarity, and the peace of mind to live happily and healthily in the unending whitewater of today's fast-changing times. On Sides 1 and 2, we introduced you to a variety of skills and perspectives for learning to focus your mind. On this tape, we'd like to take you on a tour of our world. We'll share with you some of the tools we've found most helpful to better understand what the mind is and how you can discover and focus its power in your own life.
At the turn of the century, Dr. William James, the father of modern Western psychology, had a keen interest in the nature of human consciousness and the powers and potentials of the human mind. He rightly understood that learning to focus the mind and gain mastery of attention was the most important mind fitness skill to develop if people were really serious about realizing their full potentials. In his own words, he said, "The longer one does attend to a topic, the more mastery of it he has. And the faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will." No one is fully self-developed, he felt, if he or she hasn't accomplished this. James went on to say, "An education which should improve the faculty of attention would be the education par excellence." Though James understood the critical role of concentration in personal mastery and peak performance, he also admitted that it was much easier to describe the ideal than to give practical directions for how to actually go about developing it. In James's day, and in our time as well, the mastery of attention and the perfection of concentration has been looked upon as an important but rarely accomplished task. James himself once commented that from his research and study it seemed that 4 seconds was the maximum that concentration could be maintained. In James's time, barely 100 years ago, Western psychology was a discipline in its infancy. James had an inkling that there was a wealth of wisdom to be gained from investigating the profound and technically sophisticated psychological systems that existed in many of the world's great inner science traditions. And though he had little access to those systems or their powerful teachings, he took advantage of the limited opportunities he had to study or train intensively under the guidance of mental fitness masters who held the keys to those traditions.
Less than half a century later, a renaissance in mind sciences began to revolutionize our modern view of the nature and potentials of the mind. Just think about your own life for a moment and your own growing interest in gaining greater mastery of your own life and greater insight into human nature and potential. Can you remember how little information there was available on these subjects 10, 20, or 30 years ago? But in recent years, there's been an explosion of information about the role of mind in health, in sports, and in business. It seems clear that as our outer world gets more and more complex and out of our control, people are beginning to turn their attention back to their own body, mind, and spirit in hopes of building a more firm and stable base to reliably stand on in the face of constant change and challenge. Over the past 50 years, there's been a continuously growing interest in matters of mind and human potential. This is due in part to advances in technology that have allowed us to travel and communicate more easily with people from different parts of the world. As intercontinental travel has become more common and communications have improved, many of us who are interested in human health and extraordinary performance have begun to travel, study, practice, and document the mind sciences that have existed in various parts of the world for thousands of years. As this information has become more widely available, Western scientists and doctors are coming to realize and respect that they have only a partial, though very large, piece of a very complex and multidimensional puzzle. They've begun to understand that other cultures have developed precise and exacting sciences of human development that far surpass the accomplishments of many of the younger scientific traditions that have emerged in the newly industrialized world. For example, one friend recently reminded us that in most of the rest of the world, Western medicine is alternative medicine. His comment reminded me how arrogant we can be about our own limited point of view. As more and more scientists begin to take an interest in deepening their understanding, a renaissance in contemporary mind science research has begun to unfold in the modern world. New trade routes are becoming established as respected authorities in the mind sciences travel and compare notes with their counterparts around the world. Though much funding and research has come from government and military concerns wishing to stay ahead in the mind sciences, an even larger wave of exchange is taking place through growing international networks of research, professional training, and development. Training centers and laboratories are also being established around the globe, where interdisciplinary meetings invite people from many traditions to discuss and demonstrate their understanding of the nature and potentials of the human body and mind. Comparing notes and demonstrating technologies of self-mastery that had been systematically developed and refined for millennia, a growing wave of excitement and advanced laboratory experimentation continues to evolve. With each year that passes, the wisdom of the ancient traditions weaves its way into the evolving knowledge of modern traditions of cognitive science, biobehavioral medicine, and applied psychophysiology.
With these advances, three major research and development trends have emerged that have revolutionized our understanding of the human mind and brain function. The first is that since the early 80s, a new wave of personal computers and sensitive brain mapping technology has provided us with sophisticated tools for monitoring how changing states of mind and qualities of attention produce measurable changes in the brain. Compressing the capability of expensive mainframe computers down into a desktop personal computer, this technology is now widely available in clinical and medical research settings. For $2,000 to $10,000, you can buy your own. The latest technology utilizes a bathing cap montage of sensitive sensors that measure the constantly changing flow of electrical activity in the brain. If you were hooked up to a monitor right now, you could see the flowing changes of your neuroelectric brain activity, displayed like a multicolored topological map that changes moment to moment. As you shift from one brain-mind state to another, you can literally see a shift in which parts of your brain light up, and how as you shift states, you stabilize into a new pattern that corresponds to the neuroelectric profile of focusing in that mind state. If you've really learned to focus your mind and have achieved some degree of personal mastery through training in martial arts, dance, athletics, or meditation, you can literally watch how your shifts in intention or the focus of your attention will shift the brain into different modes and levels of functioning. The power of these brain mapping tools is further enhanced when you turn them around and let people see what's going on real time in their own brains. This gives rise to the second major development that I referred to earlier, which is the development of sophisticated biofeedback training systems that teach people how to listen to the feedback from their own bodies in order to optimize the functions of both body and mind. Just as a mirror provides you with feedback necessary to part your hair and make changes in the outside of your body, biofeedback technology provides you with feedback regarding your own internal physiological state. Using this feedback about your own biology, biofeedback, you can learn with practice to monitor internal states and optimize the functions of your own body. You could use biofeedback training to help you learn to focus your mind in order to decrease your tension levels, lower your blood pressure, optimize your brain functioning, and to improve virtually any physiological function that you could measure and get feedback on. This technology has created a wave of biofeedback training tools for teaching people how to accelerate their learning of self-mastery skills and learn how to produce the physiological and neurological states that are associated with extraordinary states of mental and physical performance. The third breakthrough in mind fitness technology for building concentration has been the explosion of research and the translation of many classical mental fitness manuals that have been the handbooks for peak performers from many traditions worldwide. These classical texts have been considered treasures in their countries and have inspired millions of people over thousands of years. Over the past 30 years, the tiny shelves that once held all there was in print on these subjects have exploded into whole bookstores filled with a treasury of powerful mental fitness techniques. Many of these are profoundly effective in teaching people how to focus their minds in order to see and feel more deeply the true nature of the world in which they live.
In our own work in biotechnology and applied psychophysiology, one of the greatest breakthroughs has been in the development of the brainwave biofeedback that we mentioned earlier. You can imagine how exciting it's been for those of us who've been working in this field for decades to now be able to watch the brain light up as the power of focus of concentration grows. You can clearly see how stable and enduring the focus of mind actually is. What an inspiring sight this can be for someone who's watching. What the technology does is provide a window to view how changing states of mind are reflected in the changing activities of the brain. Though there's a clear relationship between the quality of mind and the quality of brain function, there are two primary ways to interpret this relationship. Some people hold the view that mind is actually the most subtle level of brain function. Other people hold an equally strong belief that the brain and nervous system is actually the most dense form of mind. So if you came into our office, or if we came into your office to do some executive coaching with you, we might hook you up and get a baseline reading on the level of your tension and brain function during a typical stressful day. If you were a typical person, we might hook you up and find that your muscles were holding 12 microvolts of tension, which means that you're burning up a lot of energy holding that much tension. But within just a few minutes, by observing what qualities of mind and kinds of mental focusing increase your tension and which ones decrease it, you might find that you're able to let go of the excess tension that you don't need and are perhaps 80% more relaxed with readings down around 1 or 2 microvolts.
Keep in mind that there's nothing wrong with tension per se, but when you don't even recognize that you're tense, you're asking for trouble. Your body is incredibly change and stress resilient. For example, if some mindless person swerves in front of you on the road, your body immediately kicks into a stress response to mobilize itself for defense. Once that momentary incident is over, the body has full capability to release the stress in as little as 7 seconds if you just let the wave of energy move on through. Where you run into trouble is when you let the stress accumulate. But as you learn to release stress and tension on side 4 and 5, you'll find that all of a sudden you have more energy and that you're able to think a lot clearer because you've freed up all that mind-brain energy to be focused more productively. Also, keep in mind that the level of your physical tension is closely related to the intensity of noise and distraction in your mind. So often, when you learn to let go of tension, the noise in the mind and those feelings of anxiety just melt away with the deep relaxation. Then you can really get focused and stay focused on whatever you put your mind to. As you begin to relax and get focused, that agitation in your nervous system quiets down. And as it does, the rhythms of your brain begin to slow down and to increase in their power. It's as though the erratic noise in the system quiets down and the deep natural rhythms of your own internal music begins to come forth. As you become more adept at focusing your mind, it's like learning how to shift your internal mental gears. And just as you've learned to listen to the sound of your car's engine in order to know when to shift gears, as you learn to listen to these subtle shifts in your own internal energy, you'll be able to optimize how you negotiate the steep slopes and the winding roads of your own life. Feeling more in control, you'll be better able to find that calm intensity of the focused mind state whenever you like. The biofeedback equipment that we use in the early stages of training is sort of like a tachometer that helps you learn how to listen to the RPMs of your own internal engine. Once you learn to listen and you've built your confidence, then you can drive by feel rather than having to rely on the instruments to tell you what gear you're in or when you need to shift gears. As you learn to quiet and focus your mind, you'll see that your brain actually begins to function in extraordinary ways. For instance, you're able to remain consciously aware and focused in states of deep relaxation that most people only achieve when they're deeply asleep. Practicing these skills in dynamic concentration, you'll be able to do more work with less energy, and you'll be able to deeply rest and recharge your batteries while you're online and fully awake. Also, you'll notice that both hemispheres of your brain begin to come into synchrony with each other. You can see how they're beginning to work at the same rhythm and intensity.
In folks who haven't done the inner work, it's rare to see the brain functioning in such a balanced way. When that clicks in, your inner mental experience is usually a sense of incredible flow, balance, and wholeness. At times like this, you really discover what it's like to be a fully alive and fully functioning human being.
Maybe that's why so many of those pictures of the yogis and saints and the really great athletes have such sweet, serene smiles on their face. They've learned how to get there even though they didn't have the advantage of the technology to help them accelerate the process. Watching your brainwaves reflected back to you as the colorful waveforms on a computer screen offers a surprisingly intimate look at yourself. It's like looking into your own soul or holding your own beating heart. It's really beautiful, kind of like watching biological rhythms as flowing movements in a neurological symphony. It's like you're learning to become a fine musician and learning about this instrument that you call your body. Once you learn how to access various kinds of focused mind states, you can just step through the gears, shifting gracefully from one state of mind to another at will. You can move through your mind with incredible grace and beauty and suppleness, like someone skiing a mogul field in fresh snow. Years of training and discipline give you a priceless return on your investment. You see, you can't just go out and buy a brain that's really fit for action. You've got to grow one patiently through your own efforts. Can you imagine what the quality of life in this world would be like if kids learned these mental focusing and self-mastery skills in grade school, and this kind of mastery was the norm instead of a rare occurrence?
Yes, and each one of us that learns these skills helps move us all in that direction. Things are starting to shift, and it's just a matter of time before more people catch on. It's becoming clear that we can't afford to continue to spend $700 billion a year on health care, especially when the research shows that 65 to 90% of the diseases that people suffer with are preventable if people had greater awareness and made wiser choices. I used to see these people as patients at the hospital, and it was heartbreaking to see how people had suffered because they hadn't learned skills like these. We worked with thousands of patients with high blood pressure, headaches, gastrointestinal disorders, and chronic pain and anxiety. But you know, if people were willing to give themselves a fair chance and practice these focusing and relaxing skills, long-standing symptoms would often disappear in just a matter of weeks.
Yes, it's not that difficult. And did you know that our businesses are picking up more than 40% of the healthcare bill? Look at how the rates have gone up just over the past 10 years. That amounts to more than the combined after-tax profits of all the Fortune 500 companies taken together.
Just imagine a whole business that values and rewards its people for continuously learning and improving the quality of attention and energy that they bring to their work. Now that sounds like real total quality management at work.
Well, maybe these reports will get people thinking. If not, perhaps the reality of the bills and the pain will help us to focus some attention where it needs to be. We're starting to see more and more businesses beginning to invest in helping their employees learn to take better care of themselves. And when people start to do that, they'll have the energy and presence of mind to take better care of each other and to build healthier, better working relationships. Many of the managers that we work with are especially interested in how they might apply some of these principles to helping their team work more safely and productively. We'll often engage them in an informal survey that we've been conducting on productivity and performance with our large clients in business and industry. Our question to management and supervisors is very simple. When you think about what's reasonably possible for your team in terms of your efficiency and productivity levels, how would you rate your current level of performance? Are your people working at 80% of their potential or 20%? How would you rate the level of performance of your team? Most often, we'll hear estimates that people are working at about 30 to 40% of their potential. The next step in our conversation with the management team is often, if you could increase the level of performance in your organization by 5 or 10 or 20%, how much would that be worth to you? In response to this, there are often some glances exchanged around the room and the raising of eyebrows, followed by excited moments of silence while minds and pencils busy themselves with calculations. It often turns out that the impact on the bottom line for an organization would be an increase in hundreds of millions of dollars per year.
That sure gets people's attention focused.
Absolutely. At one meeting, the CFO leaned forward and asked, "Well then, what would it take to move us in that direction?" We circled up with the team for a while and came up with 3 interrelated strategies. The first strategy was to support individuals in learning and practicing more personal energy management skills so that they could take more responsibility for keeping themselves on line and performing at optimum levels. The second strategy was to focus attention on building quality working relationships in high-performing teams that are committed to supporting individuals to taking better care of themselves and supporting each other to do whatever it takes to get the job done in a quality way. And the third strategy was to build the whole business, or at least departments within the organization, to be more conducive to the health of the human mind, body, and spirit. As you can imagine, talking about improving the focusing skills of people will often meet with initial skepticism. At first, people wonder, can we afford to do this inner work in our organization? But by the time that they've looked realistically at their business goals and have asked themselves what it's going to take to get their organization, their teams, and their people up to speed to meet the challenges ahead, it's clear what they need to do. At the end of one meeting, one of the more skeptical vice presidents laughed and said, "You know, I'm really surprised by where this conversation has taken us. I came in here thinking, can we really afford to do this kind of work in our organization? And I see now that if we're serious about meeting our business objectives, the question should actually be, can we afford not to do this work for ourselves and for our business?"
Work like this has really helped to show people all over the country that many of these methods of personal mastery make good sense for ordinary people who want to get more focused and work better with the pressures of their daily lives. It really doesn't matter if you're old or young, or from the East or West, or what your education or religion is. If you have a human body and mind, and you want to live a healthier, happier, more productive life, these inner technologies are worth looking into. What we need is more people who've really mastered these disciplines and who can translate them into our times and culture in a way that people can understand and value. Like many of our colleagues, much of our work is really bridge building. Building bridges between science and business, building synergy between individual quality and organizational quality, building bridges between left and right brain, east and west hemispheres, and modern and ancient times. As our world gets more connected, the flow goes both ways. Japan imports our total quality technology and becomes a modern industrial giant. Since Western psychology is in its infancy and our medical system knows little about how to bring body, mind, and spirit into a healthy balance, many of our finest scientists are studying with Tibetan lamas and traditional healers from many indigenous traditions. Over the past 30 years, many of the elements of their ancient inner sciences have informed and shaped the thinking and advances in modern psychology and medicine. Western scientists are being invited to the Himalayas to discuss the nature of mind and reality with the Dalai Lama, and Harvard physicians are studying acupuncture and oriental healing arts in China and Tibet. The Dalai Lama and the Vatican set up intermonastic exchange programs to explore the similarities and uniquenesses of their traditions. There are many bridges being built, and it's an exciting time to be alive. So before we close this side, here's another dynamic method to strengthen your concentration and flexibility of attention. If you're driving, you'll want to wait till later to try this one out. Begin by closing your eyes for a minute and clearing your mind by focusing on the flow of your breathing. Good. Now, as you open your eyes, with clear intention, scan everything in sight for things that are moving. As soon as you see something in motion, then leave it and look for something else in motion. Don't linger with any one thing, but give your complete attention to each moving thing for only a brief moment. When you've exhausted the field of moving objects, then close your eyes again and return to mindfulness of the flow of your breath for a moment. Then the next time you open your eyes, scan now for things that are motionless. Calmly, swiftly focus your attention to search out as many things as you can find that are still and motionless. And then once again, close your eyes and relax into the breath flow. Next, as you open your eyes, scan the world now for straight lines. See how many straight lines you can see. And then return to the breath flow. And then, with clear intention, see how many different colors you can see in the world around you. And then return to mindful breathing for a few moments. Like many of the methods of mastery that we're introducing you to, this one can be done throughout the day. As you practice in this way, keep in mind that you're learning 4 important skills. First, you're building the power and clarity of intention. This will teach you to be more purposeful of the choices that you make and where and how you focus your energy and attention. Second, through the focused power of your attention, you'll discover many new elements and dimensions of the world around you. Keep in mind that all of these facets on the jewel of your reality are here sparkling all the time, but only when you consciously attend to these elements of your world do they light up and become real for you. Third, you'll continue to strengthen the focus, flow, and flexibility of your attention. And finally, by becoming more mindful and purposeful in how you focus your attention, you'll bring the functions of your mind more into the realm of your conscious awareness and control.
Had William James lived 50 years later, he would have had access to many remarkable tools to support his work, and he would have had the opportunity to study and practice these applied psychophysical traditions of other parts of the world as we have. I'm sure that James would have learned that with proper training and discipline, attention can be mastered for much more than his estimated 4 seconds. In fact, people have demonstrated the capacity to produce states of focused concentration that can be sustained for hours or even days at a time without interruption. As William James said in the early decades of the century, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings, by changing the inner attitudes of their minds, can change the outer aspects of their lives." The more you come to understand the nature and potentials of the focused mind state, the more you'll know how true this is. One morning in 1982, I was in my office at the medical center and my secretary buzzed me. "Dr. Levy, Mr. Cook's on the line and says he has to talk to you right away." I laughed to myself, wondering what Bud had up his sleeve this time. Bud was an old friend and a former student of mine from a graduate program in the psychology of consciousness. He was also a fine sports psychologist and martial arts instructor with a generous spirit and a real hearty laugh. The last time he called me had been about an idea for working with the Seattle Mariners. The time before that, it was about training ski instructors in mind fitness on a sailboat in the Caribbean. Now what, I wondered, does Bud have up his sleeve this time? "Hey Wiz," he said, getting straight to the point, "how would you like to design the Ultimate Warrior training program for the Green Berets?" There was a long silence on my end. "No, really, I just came back from a meeting at the Delta Group and some officers placed high in the chain of command have asked for a proposal. Are you game?" Bud went on to describe how the request for proposal was prompted by the disturbing findings reported by some studies at the time, that after Vietnam nearly twice as many veterans died of suicide upon returning home than died in combat. The commanding officers who wanted to bring us in lived with this grief and heartbreak on a daily basis. They understood that there were wars going on inside of people, and they also knew that under pressure there was a certain set of skills that some people learn by chance that helps them to stay present, open, and connected to the action, and to think clearly, see what's really going on, and choose the wisest options that bring the least pain and the most likelihood of resolving the conflict. Bud explained that these far-thinking officers in the Special Forces had basically said to him, "Look, we don't know what to do, but we think that your team has the kind of mental fitness technology and people technology to help us build and equip the next generation of soldiers. We want them to have the psychophysical training they need to respond better under stress and minimize the trauma and heartbreak of unnecessary suffering for themselves and others." As Bud talked, many images filled my mind. I told him I'd do some soul-searching and get back to him. So later that week, we got together for an afternoon and we drew up a preliminary sketch for a 6-month full-time program that would address the Army's specs on producing integrated enhancements of physical, mental, team, and mission performance. Our advisors and supporters for the project ranged from some of the top researchers and biotechnology experts in the world to contemplative masters such as the Dalai Lama, Brother David Steindl-Rast, and Ram Dass. Michael Murphy and George Leonard, the founding fathers of the Human Potential Movement, offered enormous encouragement and insight into our design. So for 6 months, full-time, full-on, we opened a new frontier in personal and team development for our men, and to some degree for their families. Through mind-body fitness, relaxation, creative visualization, meditation, martial arts, and biofeedback training, we help the men learn to observe, understand, and take control of their own inner energies. They learn the power of mindfulness and how to stay focused in a state of what they called calm intensity that balanced relaxation with intense alertness. They learned to release harmful stress and tension from their bodies and minds, and explored the internal arts of using personal energy management for self-healing and recharging. The men learned the wisdom of working at optimal levels of performance rather than putting out at maximum and burning out too soon. And ultimately, perhaps, for the success of their missions, the most critical skill they learned was their enhanced ability to sense and blend with the energies of their inner and outer adversaries, and to redirect the energy of an attack in a way that respected the integrity of their lives and the lives of others. Over time, this rather unconventional Ultimate Warrior training program developed the reputation within the forces of being the Jedi Warrior program in disguise, their motto being Vicet Tecum, which is Latin for "May the Force be with you." When our corporate clients hear about this work, they often say, "Hey, we need that kind of training too. We work in a war zone. Bombs get dropped and people are wounded here every day. You never know who you can trust, and the rules of the game change moment to moment. The stakes are high for us too, and we've never had the training for how to take care of ourselves and support each other under such extreme conditions of stress and change and uncertainty. How about a corporate version of the Ultimate Warrior training program for us?" Well, this session is all about designing the Ultimate Warrior training program for for you. In ancient times, a great teacher once described the work of mastering the mind as warrior's work. He suggested that you imagine yourself as a warrior on a battlefield. As you stand here, you remember your commitment to personal mastery. You know that this means learning the personal skills necessary to recognize, subdue, and conquer all the inner obstacles and challenges that might arise in the process. As you stand here, you see standing before you an army of 1,000 powerful warriors, each one representing some personal challenge or mental conflict, a distraction or a seduction in your life. Holding true to your commitment to recognize and conquer each of these, you encounter them one by one, working each issue until it's exhausted. When the 1,000 have been met, you find another 1,000 standing before you, and then another. As this battle goes on day after day, month after month, one day a profound shift takes place for you. You're on the battlefield just like every other day, but today, as your opponents approach you, you recognize them for the first time to be your allies, your teachers, and your sparring partners. You welcome them as your friends and your teachers because they're each here with a gift to teach you to be strong. With joy and respect, you greet each of them. In each of their eyes, you see yourself looking back at you, and in befriending each of them, you discover and reclaim a piece of your own shield of personal power. When you reach this stage, the teacher says, all of the awakened warriors in the universe clap their hands and honor you as having learned well and having conquered the enemy by transforming and discovering yourself. The moral of this story is summed up by an insight shared by the Yaqui medicine man, Don Juan, with his apprentice, Carlos Castaneda. Don Juan said, "The basic difference between an ordinary person and a warrior is that a warrior takes everything as a challenge, while an ordinary person takes everything as either a blessing or a curse." As you reflect upon this teaching story, consider your relationship to the challenges you face in your life. Recognize that just like the warriors facing you on the battlefield, these challenges will hound you until you make peace with them. Especially if you're serious about developing a focused mind state, you're likely to meet many of these challenges in your life as they enter your mind in the form of distractions. They may intrude, often quite rudely, as you focus your attention where you want it to be, and clamor for you to pay attention to them by saying, "Hey, what about me? Give me your attention." As these challengers step forward, it will be wise for you to have some tactical strategies to deal skillfully with these opponents to your concentration. You know how difficult it is to concentrate when there's a lot of distraction in your surroundings. When you're upset over problems in relationship or breakdowns in communication, or when you're tired, hungry, or experiencing distress. By putting these powerful strategies to use on a daily basis, you can enhance the external and internal conditions most conducive to living and working more optimally in the focused mind state. Let's begin to explore some strategies for working with the challenges and distractions that will inevitably arise as you start your ascent to the peak of concentration. By understanding the mechanics of how concentration gets impaired, you'll be better equipped to withstand the storms of distraction and know how to take the necessary precautions for keeping your concentration strong and in good shape. As they say in Peru, it's better to prevent than to cure. So let's first examine the anatomy of distraction and do a little dissection of what gets in the way of your ability to focus the way you'd like to. The untrained mind is compared to a wild monkey that goes here and there, leaping from one thing to another, leaving a bunch of unfinished bananas and fruits in its wanderings. This tendency of scattering is further complicated and intensified when you try to weave webs of connections between all these mental focus points in an attempt to create a focused mind. This results in complicating rather than simplifying the mind, and scattering rather than focusing your attention. Perhaps the most effective method to stay focused and on track is to be clear and committed to the direction you really intend to be heading. Being clear on your goals and committed to staying on purpose will help you resist the temptation to scatter your attention in unproductive directions. To do this, you also need to develop sufficient mindfulness to know where and how your attention is directed at any given moment. For example, let's say that your intention is to read a technical report in order to be well prepared for tomorrow's meeting. Begin by sitting down and reviewing your purpose, to read the report and to be prepared. In order to fulfill this purpose, you rely on your good friend, mindfulness, to keep your attention focused on your reading. When distractions arise, such as the thought, "Oh, I should call so-and-so and see if we can get together Saturday evening," notice this distraction and how it takes your attention away from what you're doing. Remind yourself that your real goal is to stay focused for another 20 minutes on your reading. Remind yourself, too, that if you're really serious about accomplishing this goal, you'd be foolish to indulge in compulsively making a phone call at this moment. Though it may make sense to call her, it's counterproductive to produce the outcome that you're committed to. If you think you might forget to call her later, you can jot down a simple reminder note to yourself and then return to your reading. If your mind wanders back to this seduction or to some other distraction, gently but firmly say, "Stop," or "later," to yourself, and return your attention to what you're committed to doing. So to review, this process is a series of 6 steps. First, be clear and mindful of your purpose. What are you intending to do or to focus on? Next, consider the value of staying on purpose. Third, maintain your mindfulness to constantly check if you're on course and on purpose as you engage in the activity. Fourth, as distractions arise, greet them with the recognition that getting involved with them will only lead to more distraction and mental complications. You'll learn additional strategies for working with distractions soon. Fifth, remind yourself of your real goal and how foolish it would be to indulge in your wandering mind. And finally, firmly say "stop" or "not now" to the distracting thought and exercise your power of discipline to refrain from getting involved in the distraction. Trying to fight off or suppress distractions simply creates more agitation and excitement in the mind. Mindfully acknowledge the intrusion and make a conscious choice to return your attention to the activity at hand.
Why aren't you fully focused and concentrated all the time? I'm sure that you could identify a long list of both external and internal interferences. Your ability or inability to stay focused in the presence of distractions is determined by 3 interdependent factors. One is the intensity of distractions, interruptions, or demands upon you from your internal and external environment. The second is the intensity of your concentration. And the third is your level of interest and enjoyment with what you're doing. The greater your concentration, your interest, and enthusiasm, the less subject you are to being distracted by what's going on around you. You've all probably seen times in your lives or in others when your attention was so totally absorbed into what you were doing that you were totally unaware of what was going on around you. This often happens to athletes when they're truly immersed in the present moment. In the section on the flow state on side 6, we'll talk more about what it takes to turn any situation into a concentration-friendly activity. But for now, let's look at some strategies that can help you to create an outer and inner environment that's conducive to optimal concentration. First, let's consider ways to manage your outer environment to optimize the focused mind state. External to you are 2 primary arenas to be discussed. First is the physical environment itself, and second is the social environment of relationships that you're involved with. So now let's look at some specific strategies that you can use to better manage your outer physical environment, and then we'll focus in on ways for managing relationships. First now, on a sheet of paper, Make 2 columns, and on one side, list all of the things about your work or home environment that are concentration conducive and supportive. And in the other column, list all the factors that disrupt or distract your attention. After you've done this exercise, take some time to ponder what simple actions you can take to optimize your conditions to develop concentration. In general, people find that environments that are most conducive to mastery of attention are the ones that you have the most control over and choices about. The ideal but often unrealistic scenario is that you've got control over where and how you focus your attention, and that you can regulate the intrusions of people and phone calls and information that flows to and from you. Ideally, you could control the heat, the lights, and the airflow, and all other factors that influence your physical comfort. Though you may not be able to manage every aspect of your environment, we encourage you to investigate what would work in your conditions. For example, in some offices that we've worked, people found they were able to reroute foot traffic by putting up a sign, closing off a walkway, or by rearranging the furniture. Other folks rely on call forwarding to carve out time to concentrate on their work, while still others use some kind of indicator, such as an available, unavailable sign, to hang on their desk to let people know when they're fair game and when they don't wish to be disturbed. One fellow that we worked with would put on his baseball cap whenever he wanted to stay focused, and the people working around him knew that it meant this was a time to leave him undisturbed. Many folks that we work with find that working with a Walkman and listening to nature sounds or other music can help them to shut out external distractions and stay more concentrated on their work. Research in accelerated learning technology has shown that certain kinds of music have rhythms that are at the same frequency as the brain waves in the focused mind state. Listening to these kinds of sounds can encourage your brain to shift into a mode of functioning that's more focused, attentive, and receptive to new information. You might also give some attention to how you manage your time and see if you can set a schedule that reduces your stress. If you have certain tasks or responsibilities that are interrupt-driven, see if you can schedule them for specific hours of your workday and schedule other periods of time when you can really focus your attention on your work with minimal distractions. In other situations, people have developed flexible schedules that allow them to work at home away from the distractions of their office. Also, be watchful of times when your attention goes slack or when you have to spend time waiting. Rather than distracting yourself or diffusing your attention in mind-wandering or TV watching, consider focusing some attention on polishing up the qualities of mind that you'd like to have shine more brightly in your life. Unstructured time that's spent waiting or just hanging out can provide wonderful opportunities to flex your mental muscles by practicing the techniques of mental focusing that you'll learn in the tapes to come.
Relationships are another area of your life that need to be managed to optimize your success in focusing. Breakdowns or breakthroughs in your relationships have a lot of influence over the quality of your mind state. Though a whole series of tapes could be devoted to methods for building better working relationships, a few strategies here may be helpful for you. Relationships provide you with a laboratory to work on yourself. If you approach them as opportunities to develop greater qualities of mind, your relationships will reveal many opportunities to build the power of your patience, your attention, and your listening skills, your empathy and compassion, and many other valuable qualities of mind. There's much to be learned about yourself if you pay attention to your patterns of behavior, emotional reactions, and thoughts. Regardless of the nature of your relationships with someone, there's one very important point to remember. Your work is always to understand and master yourself. It's not to make someone else change. If you stay true to working on yourself, you automatically change the dynamics of your relationship in a way that will create more conducive opportunities for others to grow as well. As you deepen your attention and grow more aware of unproductive patterns of relationship, it's bound to create some discomfort for yourself and others at times. The bottom line is that if you're willing to invest the time, energy, and attention to improving the quality of your relationships, the return on your investment will give you and others in your life more time, more energy, and far less grief in return. Let's take a brief look at some other strategies for improving the quality of your relationship to provide more concentration-friendly situations in your life. The first step is to acknowledge people. Let them know what you appreciate about how they live or work with you. Tell someone, "Joan, I really appreciate the way you take the time to fill me in on what's happening on the projects we're working on when I miss a meeting." Encourage them to continue to do what you enjoy. Ask people that you live or work with, "How can I support you better?" Or, "What can I do to build a better working relationship with you?" Take advantage of classes or training materials that teach you how to communicate better, how to be more assertive, how to improve your listening skills. And if, after closely examining your circumstances, you find that your present skills are not up to the demands you experience, or if it's clear that the situation is destructive or threatening to the quality of your life and health, examine your options. Choices made in the past at a certain level of awareness may call for re-examination at a later time. It's okay to ask for support that you need, or to set limits by saying no to unproductive ways of relating. It's also okay to move on to situations that are more conducive and supportive of your growth and development. Whatever you do, before you make any radical decisions, invest some focused thinking about the situation over time and avoid acting impulsively. Ask for help, coaching, or counseling from people you trust or from people who can offer some objective perspective. In general, remember, the magnitude of breakdown that a relationship can sustain is directly proportional to the quality of relationship that you've built with people. Do everything that you can to build healthy, trusting relationships with the people in your life.
Now let's talk about how our inner environment can become distracted and some ways to bring it back into balance. As you do the inner work necessary to master attention and perfect concentration, there are 5 primary hindrances that you'll undoubtedly encounter. In the mythology of the world's great traditions, these hindrances are often portrayed as enemies or demons that keep the heroes from realizing their true happiness or discovering the hidden treasures of their full potentials. For the sake of our work together, we suggest that you merely relate to the presence of these forces in your mind as misdirected mental energies, habits of the mind that are like unwanted guests causing trouble in the mansion of your mind. The first of these unwelcome guests is the compulsive desire for new experiences. The Greek philosopher Epicurus recognized the potency of this threat to your inner balance when he said, "If you want to make a man happy, add not to his riches, but take away from his desires." Compulsive desire scatters the mind among a multitude of different things. This is the mind that's never satisfied and keeps clicking through an infinite number of different channels or directions, seeking for some kind of satisfaction or contentment. When you allow this guest to wander around freely in your mind, you're creating a situation that's lethal for the mastery of attention. By developing greater equanimity and non-reactivity, you can learn to antidote the scattering and fragmenting effects of the craving for novelty and firmly focus the power of your mind. Reflecting on impermanence and how everything that you chase after will sooner or later leave you anyway can also take the wind out of desire's sails. As a result, physical tensions will melt away, and it's easier to relax and stay focused on what you're doing. The second unwelcome guest is resentment or ill will. This painful emotion fills the mind with negativity and agitation. Ill will continually creates divisions and darkens and cramps the mind. When the mind is filled with animosity, it's impossible for attention to flow in a balanced, free, and continuous manner. Patience and compassion warm and open the heart and mind. They create a conducive environment to develop concentration because they generate greater spaciousness and wholeness within the body and mind. The best protection against resentment and ill will is to build healthy, quality relationships whenever possible in your personal and professional lives. The energy it takes to do this is far less than the energy you'll burn up in thinking and worrying about unresolved issues. The third unwelcome guest is drowsiness or sluggishness. This is the mind that's heavy and sinking into dullness, clouded by the undigested contents of consciousness that haven't been released or processed. Physically, the befogged mind is often accompanied by considerable physical fatigue, lack of energy, or sluggishness that makes concentration impossible due to a lack of clarity. If you can turn your mind towards joyful and uplifting or inspiring thoughts, you'll notice that your energy immediately increases and your mind brightens up as the fog melts away into the lucidly clear sky of the focused mind. Mental dullness can also be dispelled by turning your attention to something that you really enjoy or find of interest, or by visualizing that your mind and body are being filled with light. Experiment with visualizing an expanding mental image like a sphere of light in your heart that expands and grows larger and larger. At other times, the mind can be cleared by going out for a brisk stroll, watching the moon and stars, washing your face, or even taking a shower. Then we have the fourth unwelcome guest in the mind, which goes by the names of anxiety, or worry or fear. The agitation caused by these mind states consumes considerable energy and causes restlessness. To develop concentration, anxiety and worry must be transformed by building a greater sense of personal strength and confidence. Often, anxiety is fed by an excess of tension in your body. You may find that by dismantling the physical scaffolding of the anxiety, by relaxing and releasing the tension, the mind becomes calmer and quieter as well. Anxiety and fear can also be reduced by acknowledging your feelings, by reflecting on past successes and personal strengths, and by talking with others who can provide useful suggestions and coaching. The fifth unwelcome guest goes by the name of doubt and manifests often as a lack of self-confidence or self-worth. The voices of doubt speak of all the reasons why you can't accomplish your goals. With doubt present in the mind, confusion and cynicism can immobilize you from focusing your intention into action or even attempting to improve your situation. Doubt is transformed by the faith and confidence that grows from realizing that, although you may not be able to change some situations, you can show mastery over your response to those situations. When in doubt, get clear on where you'd like to go or on how you'd like to be, and take even the tiniest step in that direction. When you see that you really can get unstuck and make a positive change, keep the momentum going. Many small steps, one after another, will ultimately get you where you want to go.
Perhaps some or all of these 5 visitors are familiar to you. In every case, reduce the reactivity or negativity of your mind by learning to meet these frustrating influences with more patience, understanding, and compassion. For example, one of the best strategies for working with anxiety is to avoid the reactive tendency to get anxious about being anxious. The same holds true for reducing your anger about being angry, or reducing your agitation about being agitated. As the power of your mindfulness and vigilance grows, you'll notice the presence of these negative forces in your mind before they've created a lot of upset for you. As you become aware of the presence of these misdirected energies in your mind and body, be patient and compassionate with yourself. 3 of the most effective strategies for transforming and redirecting these mind states are as follows. First, acknowledge the presence of the mind state. Second, label or name the guest. Aha, fear, I see you here in my mind. And then third, Stop telling yourself the story that the guest is telling you, and avoid getting involved with their content. No matter how seductive or alluring the storyline, just say enough and redirect your attention back to whatever you're trying to focus your concentration on. Simply put, if you stop feeding these unwanted guests with your attention, they will begin to shrink in their ability to disturb you. Over time, these grisly goblins may shrink to become like cute little schmoos that still come and play in your mind, but they have little influence or power over you. If over days or weeks the same unproductive or disturbing mind states continue to frequently be present in your mind, then make some time to sit down and listen to what they're trying to tell you. To do this most effectively, you might work with the methods on Side 9 on mindfulness and the power of breakthrough thinking. If, upon some reflection, these issues are still asking for more attention and skill than you're able to bring to them, then perhaps talk about them with a friend or a counselor who can help you get a better handle on this situation. We'll continue to develop these strategies on the next side, where you'll be moving from your base camp up to the next zone on the mountain of concentration.